Welcome to In.The.News. I'm your host, Holy Joe Rock and Roll, coming at you live and unscripted. I want to thank everybody who watched my last video entitled Poland Fights Back regarding the murder in Elk, Poland, in northeast part of Poland. I want to thank all my Polish people who have watched the video, commented, and subscribed to the channel. Thank you very much. Today I want to talk about something different. Just came out yesterday that the United States and NATO are sending a huge force into Germany to eventually come to the Baltic States and Poland for military exercises, and also for rotating battalion of troops and tanks and armored vehicles to be stationed in the Baltic States and Poland. Now, many people don't realize it, but there is a part of what was formerly known as Prussia on the Baltic coast. It's north of Poland, that is actually part of Russia, known as Kaliningrad or Kaliningrad, whatever they call it. So Poland, in fact, does border on Russian territory. And they're saying in these articles that there's going to be hundreds of armored vehicles that they've already rolled off the ships in Bremerhaven, Germany, and among the equipment will be 87 Abrams M1A1 tanks, 20 Paladin artillery vehicles, and 136 Bradley fighting vehicles. There's also going to be helicopters, 50 Black Hawk helicopters, and 10 Chinook helicopters, and 1,800 personnel as part of a separate aviation battalion with 400 troops and 24 Apache helicopters. So it's quite a big move into the outskirts of Russia. Now, here's one of the Paladin. It's basically it's an artillery, mobile artillery vehicle that's you see there, and then in the background you have these. You can see these M1A1 tanks. Looks like that. So I'm of two minds of the situation here, and I'm wondering what you think. The Polish people that I'm talking to, especially in relation to what Russia has done to Crimea and eastern Ukraine, I really haven't found any Polish people willing to risk their lives, lose their lives to defend Ukraine. That's what I'm finding. Just the average person. I actually ran into a man and his son on my way back from one of my trips to another city. I stopped at a gas station outside of Krakow. We were having something to eat, and I chatting with him in Polish, and he said, basically, fuck Ukraine for what they did to Poland after World War II. Now, another historical fact is that a large part of Western Ukraine was actually Polish territory before World War II. And right as World War II was ending, I don't know, Ukrainian partisans or White Russians or Ukrainian nationalists, whatever you want to call them, started killing Polish people that lived in Western Ukraine, forcing them out. And of course, the border was drawn, giving this western part of Ukraine, cities like Lviv, it's a Polish city. Go to Lviv, look around. It's very similar to Krakow because it was built around the same time, same architecture. And these Polish people obviously were kicked out, were killed, massacred, and forced out of Western Ukraine. So people who remember this history, and Polish people are very aware of their history, are not willing to risk their lives to save Ukraine. Now, I want to add to this. This is anecdotal, but the last time I went to the Office for Foreigners, submitting my application for Polish citizenship, what did I see? I'll tell you what I saw. I saw one Syrian family. They could have been Christian. I don't know. They were speaking English to the Polish people processing their paperwork. This is around August of 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was 2016. Yeah, around August of 2016. I saw one, like I said, Syrian family. It was a father, a mother, and a son. She was wearing a headscarf, but not a hijab, whatever. And he just was dressed in normal sort of like business attire. They're speaking English, as I said, so they probably were educated. They probably were Christian, but I don't know that for sure. The rest of the people there were military-aged Ukrainian white men, okay? They were all in line getting their work visas or karty pobytu, which is residency card, to work, to live legally in Poland. Now, under Polish law, if you can prove that you have Polish lineage, so grandfather, great-grandfather, grandmother, great-grandmother was Polish, you actually are considered Polish, and you can get Polish citizenship. So I don't know if that's the case, if these are, Ukrainian Poles, Polish Ukrainians, or they're just Ukrainians. All I'm saying is that there was everybody in that place, with the exception of maybe one Chinese-looking or Vietnamese-looking person, probably a cook. But I digress. Everybody else was Ukrainian, looking to stay in Poland. And I made the comment, why are these assholes here? Why aren't they in Ukraine fighting for their country? And I was told that, it's not my business. But anyhow, I digress. Well, what I'm trying to say, coming back to the point, is the vast majority of Polish people that I know, that I've had contact with, said that they would not risk their lives to free Ukraine from Russia. They're saying, let Russia take Ukraine. Now, I countered that argument with this point, saying, look, I believe that the reason why the previous Polish government was willing to support Ukraine was because if we don't stop Russia in Ukraine, what's going to stop them? They're going to come to Poland next, right? So that's the argument for taking some action in Ukraine on behalf of the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian people, to bolster their position. So I'm really torn on that whole thing. Obviously, I would fight for Poland to remain independent and not be occupied by any foreign power, be it Russia or anybody else. But yeah, I mean, previously I was probably more pro war with not necessarily war with Russia, but supporting the Ukrainians. I still support supporting Ukraine to defend themselves. Okay, if Western Ukrainians are willing to defend themselves against Russia, fine. Let's help them defend themselves. But I don't see why anybody else needs to die for Ukrainians if they're not willing to fight for their own freedom and independence. So with this new report, which came out just yesterday, the U.S. basically sending troops to the Baltic States. Obviously, some of them are going to be doing, about 1,000 of them will be doing maneuvers, training maneuvers in Poland. I'm all for that. I think it's great for the Polish military to continue to remain sharp, to continue to train, and be ready for anything that could happen. And some people on the left, especially the leftist parties in Germany, are saying this is a provocation against Russia, and that tanks never brought peace anywhere. But that's not necessarily true. Maybe the Germans forget about the Sherman tank, which brought peace to Germany. And what, the T-34? Did that also help to bring peace to Germany during World War II? But I digress. The point being here that I think Polish people probably are split, and maybe more on the side of not interfering directly.
It's 12 o'clock.
With Ukraine, but obviously probably supportive of Ukraine defending themselves, and Poland being in a position to defend itself if there was any kind of shit hits the fan. Okay? But in the recent history of Russia, I think we can see a really interesting dichotomy in the left and right positions, right? Obviously, when Russia was the Soviet Union, it was the evil empire, okay? It occupied Eastern Europe and basically was a totalitarian regime denying freedoms to the people. Okay, we know that. Okay, that's communism in a nutshell. Okay? However, now, modern Russia, as it has evolved and transformed itself into a white Christian nationalistic nation, we see that the left, who was so pro-communism, is now anti-Russia. We saw that in Hillary Clinton, demanding a no-fly zone over Syria, which would definitely create a war with Russia. which we saw the generals saying if we wanted to create a no-fly zone over Syria, we'd have to fight the Syrians and the Russians who are actively in Syria defending Bashar al-Assad, the legitimate president of Syria. Now, I've said repeatedly on this channel, we have no reason to be fighting Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Syria has not done anything to hurt the United States or NATO or Poland for that fact. Right? The only person who has a beef with Syria in the world that I'm aware of is Israel, because Syria has said repeatedly they will make peace with Israel if Israel will give back the Golan Heights, which was taken in whatever war that was, 1968 or 73 or whenever it was. Israelis seized the Golan Heights and Syria wants it back. And that's land for peace. That is a formula that has worked in the past. But Israel is continuing to resist giving back the Golan Heights because they can claim that is a strategic territory that they cannot give up. So again, this puts pressure, I would think, in my opinion, this puts pressure on the side of Israel. If you really want to have peace with your neighbors, you're going to have to give something up. Syria is not a threat to you directly. Now, on the flip, let's be honest, fair and balanced, on the flip, Iran has been funneling arms through Syria, which it considers a client state, to Hezbollah and other fighters in southern Lebanon and into the Palestinian territories, Gaza Strip. So we know that there is some connection there. And so Syria may be providing some material support from Iran through Syria to help the Palestinians resist Israeli occupation, Israeli rule. Now, I don't agree with that. I think that has to stop. This Syrian support for Hezbollah and other groups in the Palestinian territories has to stop. Whatever support that they're giving, I don't know that it's necessarily direct support, but say indirect, right? Funneling weapons and food, supplies, that kind of stuff. Humanitarian aid, of course, yes, continue that. But weapons and material to make these rockets, if that's coming through Syria, obviously funded by Iran, because Syria really has no money. It's a piss poor, mostly desert country. That has to end. But I digress. Again, the U.S. should really, as Trump has stated repeatedly, we got to fight ISIS first. And that means enabling Assad to take control of his country. If there's peace in Syria, this whole refugee crisis is over, right? Because even though most of these refugees, or let's say 40% of them, are not Syrian that have come into Germany over the last year or so, they say that 40% of them are Afghani, Pakistani, even North African. It would remove one of the political talking points of the left, claiming that these are Syrian refugees fleeing a war, when we know that at least 40% of them are definitely not Syrian. Perhaps it's higher than 40% are not Syrian, and are definitely not in any kind of war zone where they're fearing for their lives and they would even get any kind of refugee status. So those are my thoughts. I'm wondering what you're thinking regarding this issue. And if you're Polish, I would love to know, do you agree with the majority of the people that I've spoken to, the Polish people, who have said that they wouldn't risk their lives, they would not want to go to war with Russia over Ukraine, or do you have a different opinion on that? Am I not talking to the right people? Because I've tried to talk to numerous people, and this is sort of the overwhelming majority has said that they're not willing to fight for Ukraine because of the history of Ukraine vis-a-vis Poland. Well, that's all I got for today. This is Holy Joe Rock and Roll. I've been coming at you live and unscripted. This has been In the News, reminding you to make it happen for the captain because you're the captain.